pastor's testimony, and I'm not really sure what he's going to share. But I believe that he has a word for us to hear this morning, and then we'll go on to one of our presenters. Randy?
Sure. I just want to follow up what Marty has said about being a spiritual exercise and not just a logistical exercise when we think about these things. I think about the foundational call that Jesus has given to all of us as disciples is to take up the cross and follow Jesus. Of course, if we think about Jesus in his own walk to the cross is an instrument of sacrifice. The cross is an instrument of humiliation. The cross is an instrument of death. Right? And so Jesus really gave himself on that cross, gave his life away upon that cross. And as we think about our life as disciples, we might be tempted to think, well, of course, that's Jesus. You know, the Son of God, Jesus does that kind of thing on our behalf. But what was the call that Jesus gave his disciples? It wasn't, watch me take up the cross, but you take up the cross and follow me. And so our call is to have a cruciform kind of life, a life that is informed and shaped by the very one who gave his life away on the cross. Then I think also about the shepherd image as a pastor. And after Jesus had died, risen, has that moment with Peter, do you love me, do you love me, do you love me? And he tells Peter, feed my sheep, tend my sheep, feed my sheep. I think that shepherd image is a powerful image for pastors as well. What does it look like for us to be shepherds in a world in which violence is swirling all around us? What does it look like to think about caring, loving, feeding, and of course this morning, what does it look like for pastors to think in terms of protecting the sheep? How do we think about that in a world? And so what I feel is there is a kind of tension. A tension on one end is this taking up the cross and following Jesus. Tension on the other end is this shepherd image in which I want to do all I can to protect the people that God has allowed me to serve with, right? If you think about a guitar string, what makes a guitar string make music, right? It's tension. And you tighten that string up, one end to the other, and it gets the right tone. And so what I don't want us to do as a conference this morning is try to find the balance. I'm not interested as a pastor in trying to find what is comfortable for our church. Those balanced words and comfortable words ought not to be a part of this particular conference. This ought to be uncomfortable. This ought to be tense. And by that I don't mean we're going to start, fisticuffs and, wrestling and all that. But it ought to be a consistently tense conversation when we think about security in the life of Christ's church. Because we are called to take up the cross and follow Jesus. We are called to shepherd and protect and care. But somewhere in that tension is the right note, right? Just like on a guitar string, somewhere in that tension is the right note that we're seeking to strike within our congregations. So as a pastor, that's what I'm after. I hope that the tension stays. If we get too comfortable around security questions at First Baptist Hillsboro, I hope to pluck that string and remind that, no, there's a little tension here, what we are called to do as followers of Jesus and as those who protect our flock. Now, I want that tension to remain. And so I just bring that to you from a pastoral perspective, because a lot of times we can veer into, well, we don't need to do anything, right? We're just wide open. Well, I don't know if that's the right note. We can also veer into, well, let's create a fortress, right? And the only people who can get in, are those who know the secret handshake and whatever. We can fall on that direction as well. But there is clearly a right note that we're aiming at in all of our congregations. But don't think that it's a comfortable note. Don't think that it's an easy note. This is a tense situation, a tense conversation. And rightly so. So I just wanted to sort of give that from a pastoral perspective. Let's think about taking up the cross, following Jesus. Let's think about the shepherding aspect that we have around those that we want to care for.
Thanks, Randy. Appreciate that. Respect it. I'm going to invite Matthew, or Matt? Okay. Matt Parmalee with Brotherhood Mutual is here with us. He flew in yesterday.
Yes.
And he came the furthest. He wins the prize for coming the furthest. He came from
Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Fort Wayne, Indiana. You may further than that this morning. Okay.
As we get likes our warm weather.
You are warmer than you are.
All right. So Matt is here, and we're really glad to have him be able to share with us. Before he does, I want to say a prayer, okay? Father God, we just ask that you would continue to use Matt, that you would speak through him, that the things that he shares with us will be things that we can use in our churches, and that it will make an eternal difference. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for allowing me the privilege to come here and talk to you about an issue that I wish we didn't have to talk to you about. But unfortunately, in church today, we do need to talk about security. And if I drop this mic, you can't hear me, wave your hand and I'll try to hold it back up. I've been with Brotherhood for 3 years now. Before that, I was on staff at a little church called Saddleback Church in Lake Forest, California. Worked for Rick Warren for 14 years as Director of Operations, and one of the things that was under my purview was security. And even at a large church that had a lot of resources, it was still an uphill battle to get the security team to where it was when I left. So what I want to talk to you about today, but before I do, I think Curtis Knapp, our local agent with ACG North Carolina, is here, and he has brought some stuff that you guys can use. But one of the things Brotherhood Mutual has put together is a whole safety online library. We have a security guidebook. There's Curtis right there in the back. You can't miss him. So we have that. We have a security guidebook that Brotherhood has put together. Has about 230 pages. Got some sample forms in there. How to start a team. Various different things on what to do. But what I want to talk about you today is how to build and maintain a volunteer safety and security team. All right, you. Thanks. So people ask why church safety and security. Churches reflect the world around them. People who come to church, members and strangers alike, bring their issues with them. When the doors are open and the welcome mat rolled out, churches have to be prepared for who and what walks in. We all agree with that statement? So we have people that come into our congregation, into our churches today that we don't know what part, what walk of life, what stage of life they're in, what problems they're having at home. We just have to be prepared for that. Being unprepared is no longer an option. And these are just some of the, you want to work harder? These are some of the major church shootings that have happened over the years. Most of you are familiar with the 2007, the New Life shooting with Matthew Murray. And of course, we all remember the one in Southern Texas just last year. So people expect reasonable measures to be in place to protect them. Many churches are not prepared to address even today's most basic issues. Medical problems. How many churches have a medical team, safety team that's able to help with medical emergencies? I see one. Couple? Okay, good. Also, things we have to deal with today are non-custodial parents. We dealt with that a lot. I did at Saddleback Church in our children's ministry. We would have parents come up, try to pick up a child that they didn't have custody of. That was a big issue that we ran into. And the "it can't happen here" reality is no longer. It's not if, it's when something's going to happen. Okay, when we build a safety and security team, number one, you want to engage your leadership. You got to make sure that you have buy-in from leaders. That's the key. It's a hard thing if you don't have that. It's going to be tough to get the security team going. Assess your situation, know what you're dealing with, and then you want to make big decisions, but you've got resources, legal issues, insurance. One of the biggest things we get a question about is concealed carry weapons. Are we going to allow that? That's another thing we need to talk about. And then also forming a team. Okay, you want to engage your church leadership. You want to gather information that will guide your discussion with church leaders. Number one, reasons for starting a team. Personal experience that prompts your concern. I mean, we have that. I mean, you don't even need a personal experience. Just look around the nation and what's happening today. You want to identify safety issues at your church and also identify any incidents that have happened previously. You want to be able to focus your leadership presentation in terms of the concerns of the church leaders. First thing and foremost, we got to protect our kids. How many parents in the room? I have a 13 and 12-year-old. It's a tough world I live in to raise those two kids in the world today and the different issues that we're facing. How do you teach your kids, when it's okay when somebody's walking down the street, the whole gay and lesbian community? How do you teach your kids we need to love those people, but yet, it's a tough thing. Berlin Mutual, unfortunately, gets 2 to 3 claims a week due to child sexual abuse. Wish we didn't have to have that, but unfortunately, it's an issue we're dealing with today. So protect the congregation, the gathering, protect your offering. There's people that come in that, watch. One of the things I encourage churches to do is, especially when they take their offering to the bank, don't take the same route each time. Because if people want to do something, they're gonna watch, they're gonna know which way you go. And then you want to protect your ministries. You need to enlist the support of your pastor. Okay, he's the one that guides the congregation. He's the one that knows the people. Now, we also get a lot, well, I knew that person. Well, let me tell you about a 32-year-old man that I knew at Saddleback Church that last year got arrested for lewd and malicious acts with 2 14-year-old boys. I knew him, but at the same time, I didn't really know him. So how well do we know people? He also sees the entire sanctuary during the church service. And most of your people looking up at me, I get the chance to look at all you. So he knows and he can see what's going on. Okay, you want to make sure that your church leaders formally approve the creation of a team and appoint a full-time person to oversee it. It doesn't have to be, it can be a lay person. But if you have somebody in your congregation that is a current or former law enforcement and they have the desire to lead that ministry, I would highly encourage them to be able to do that. Okay, assessment is essential. You don't know what you don't know. You want to do good assessments that are multidimensional. You want to look at your whole buildings and grounds. You want to look at your church mission. How many people, when you guys go into a restaurant, don't like to sit with your back to the door? Anybody? That's me. I want to be able to see. Now again, I've been doing this stuff for 20 years. So I want to be able to see what's going on and look and know who's coming in that door. Your church mission, also your ministries and programs. What ministries and programs are you using and doing? And also, what's your church culture and where are you guys heading? Different churches have different culture. At Saddleback Church, we did not use local sheriffs to have security. That wasn't our culture. If the sheriff's pulled up, somebody wants to know what's going on. I've been to Christ Church of the Valley in Phoenix, Arizona. They use sheriffs for everything, for parking lot, for traffic, for security. That's their culture. It works for them. So whatever your culture is and what works for you is what you need to figure out. Then also, it's the unique characteristics of the congregation. You want to ask for help from church members. There's a lot of talent that we have in churches that we may not know. There's a lot of people that come in and sit every week in a pew, and they may be talented at certain things, but they may be shy, they don't want to be asked. But sometimes they're just sitting there waiting to be asked, so figure out who those people are. And also you can seek help from local experts. You've got other churches. I highly encourage you to get connected with your local law enforcement. In fact, have them come into your church, even if it's available, let them do training in your church. Number one, you're getting to know them, you're building that relationship. Number two, if there ever is an incident, they already know your building, they know where to go and what's going to happen. Fire department, same thing. And then also with legal and insurance advisors and cards back there for insurance, even if you aren't insured with Brotherhood. Okay, you want to establish an assessment schedule, so you want to set goals and a deadline for completion. Provide instructions, assign tasks and responsibilities, and also you want to gather your assessment tools, your church policies, procedures, site maps, and keys. Now, how many of you guys have a church policy? Okay, not many do. Thank you. But I talked to a lot of churches across the nation. A lot of churches don't have policies. Policies and procedures are 2 4-letter words, and most people, they don't like to have them, but unfortunately we do. We gotta have policies and procedures in place. And keys, that's a big thing. How many people in churches think they need to have a key to the building? I had a key at Saddleback Church that was called a Grand Master. All that meant was I had more responsibility. And allowed to let pastors in when they forgot their keys at home. You want to analyze your assessment results? Okay, you want to prepare a big list of issues to discuss with the leadership. Okay, so what are some of the issues? You've got budget, people, and it doesn't take a lot of money to start a security team, but you do have to have some funding. I mean, starting with basic, just having some radios, getting together a team. It's not a huge cost, but there is some budget items that need to be put there. You've got legal and insurance issues. Know what your local laws are. And with Brotherhood Mutual, one thing I appreciate about them, that's why I'm standing here today, is we have a lot of ministry-related coverages. And first, what's the coverage for security?
It's actually called security operations.
Security operations liability is what we have. Weapons, that's a big thing. We get a lot of questions about weapons. Do we allow them in? What are we going to do? What's your church position? And then other issues that are specific to your church and community, because different communities deal with different issues. Okay, you seek leadership or approval to move forward. There's a few right or wrong answers. It depends on your situation. Don't expect to decide everything in a single meeting. I have a lot of meetings that I'm in a brotherhood. Sometimes I come out, we haven't decided anything. Then next week we'll have that meeting again. So don't be alarmed if you don't, and don't be alarmed if you have some resistance too. Then also you want to create an action plan. So when it comes to making big decisions, you want to set priorities. Okay, which risk could cause the greatest harm to people around the property? You want to try to list about 10. They may be simple. Are any of these risks likely to happen in the next 6 months? Maybe, maybe not. And are any of these risks likely to pose an immediate threat to someone's life or health? So if there's something that you guys see that you bring to your church leadership, it's a major threat, fix those first. Here's the big question. And we get this a lot. Concealed carry weapons. What will your church allow? And you also, concealed carry is allowed in some states. I came from California for 14 years, where it was a May issue state. And that was very hard to even get one. Moved to the state of Indiana, where you get your lifetime concealed carry for about $120. So different states vary. I'm not sure what the concealed carry law here is in North Carolina, but find out what that is, find out from your local law enforcement. Your leadership can prohibit concealed carry weapons on your church property, even if the state allows it. You guys can, if you want to, as churches, make the decision whether to have or not have weapons inside the church. And this decision should be made with help from an attorney and familiar with local laws. So, again, you want to know what your state says about concealed carry law, how much training is required before a person can legally carry a concealed weapon in your state. You also know how will a concealed weapon holder respond in life or death situations. When it comes to a security team, you get a lot of people that are really anxious, some of them that want to join. Those are the guys that you need to really talk to, because if they get to an active shooter situation, how well are they going to respond? And also, how do we ensure that a weapon doesn't accidentally discharge during the service? Do we have any law enforcement people here? How many accidental discharges have you seen in your career?
Negligent discharge.
Yes.
You were right.
Yeah. And that's the range, where they're supposed to be pointing the gun down, downrange. Somebody accidentally discharged a weapon in here, somebody's probably going to get hurt. So that's why it's key to know what you're going to do and train those people that if you are going to allow concealed carry in your church. Okay, regardless of the leadership's decision, the church retains a legal moral duty to reasonably protect those who attend. Coordination within the church and the first responders require excellent communication. And your concealed carry policy will significantly affect your potential liability if shots are fired. That's with, where Brotherhood has that security coverage. If you guys do get to an active shooter situation, somebody does happen to shoot somebody, we have protection for you. So when it comes to forming, how am I doing on time? Marty, good? Okay. So when it comes to forming a safety security team, depending on the size of your church, you may need more than one team. Saddleback Church, one campus, covered 120 acres at 1 million square feet. So we had to have several people on that campus at one time. Then you get to your smaller churches where 1 or 2 people. I would recommend if you're going to start and you only have a handful of people, put somebody in the parking lot, put somebody at the front door, put somebody definitely around your children's ministry, and then also somebody sitting in the worship center. So you want to know how to handle medical emergencies. You're going to provide personal security. You're going to improve building safety, protecting the children's ministry, which is one of the biggest key, patrolling the parking lot, and then performing crowd control at special events. So when it comes to team composition, you can have a difference between volunteers and paid security. Some churches have the funds to do paid security, and other times they don't. Size of the team, and you want to know what skills you guys are going to have. And then also, with former law enforcement medical professionals, there's probably somebody in your church, so tap into those guys right away. So risk to others, the likelihood of a team member being overpowered. There's also team members shooting someone unintended, and team supervision. So you want to make sure the person that is leading that team does a great job of supervising and overseeing the team. And again, weapons. Who's going to carry? Anybody? None? I know at Saddleback Church we just allowed either current or former law enforcement officers to carry. We had, when I was there, 10 people, paid staff, and about 150 volunteers. So the only people that carried weapons were the current force. We had about a handful of people that carried a weapon on campus at Saddleback Church. Okay, so the process of forming a team, you want to identify the people you want. Because again, a lot of places when you let the announcement know that you're going to form a team, you're going to get a lot of people coming out of the woodworks that just want to be part of that. And you just really want to make sure that you are, that they're really fit for that job. It is a, a very, excuse me. So you want to identify people you want to recruit by personal invitation. Don't send a blast email out saying we're going to start a security team. Then you want to train. Training is key, and then you can deploy. So you want to make sure that people have strong people skills, because a lot of times, we get a lot of requests for active shooter training, but there's a lot of things that get missed that lead up to that active shooter. And a lot of those are verbal disruptions. So when you have people, do they have the availability to effectively communicate? Do they know how to deal with mental and emotional stability people? Do they have the keen ability to observe people in situations? Do they have good judgment and they're not impulsive? And also, do they have integrity? Are they honest, fair, and have compassion? Because people are coming to your church because they know it's a safe place. And probably the last thing you guys want to do as a church, if somebody is disruptive, is to kick them out and that they never want to come back again. I know that what churches aren't about. They're about love and about welcoming people. So there's different ways of handling difficult people. So desirable characteristics for team members. Again, if you can have professional law enforcement backgrounds, retired or active. So potential leaders that have a lifetime of experience in leadership qualities, and also retired professionals will have time, ample experience, and connections for identifying other potential recruits. I have a short time, I'm going to skip through some here. Okay, so when it comes to forming a team, you want to make that meet face-to-face with the ask. You want to extend the invitation as if you're inviting a trusted colleague to a dinner. You want to approach prospective volunteers because you believe they are the right person for this position, and you want to explain all the ups and downs of volunteer in this position. It's not like coming into the nursery and watching a 2-year-old for an hour, changing some diapers, and then going home. You've got to be on your feet, vigilant, looking at stuff, being prepared to do what you need to do. Don't ask on the fly, don't oversell, don't promise, and don't glorify. But it's sometimes it's not the most glorified position, but it's something we need to do. And don't use the God trump card saying God told me to ask you, or God told me you should do this. And then let the candidate know that you're going to have a comprehensive screening will be required. So when you screen candidates, you want to make sure that you do a background screening. How many churches do background checks in here? Good. Now, it's not going to catch everything, but it's a start. It's something we need to do, something I encourage all of our churches to do is background screening. I've been to some churches and they don't do background screening, and they've told me they're not going to. So you want to make sure to check their professional experience, their ministry experience, personal references. That's key. You can find a lot about people from their personal references. Background check authorization, and then a liability release. So, when you have a team, you want to keep training. Police officers, when they first come through the academy, they don't stop training, they keep training. They train and train and train and retrain. That's life. If we stop training and stop learning. So when it comes to a volunteer team, you want to make sure that you're training and retraining. So volunteer enthusiasm depends greatly on the job of training and orientation. I had about 300 volunteers under me at Saddleback Church. I had to constantly come up with creative ways to keep them engaged and keep them going, because sometimes things can become mundane. Offer individual and group training to explain the policies and guidelines and how to deal with different types of safety and security needs. Domestic violence, you've got teenager pranks. And then also, when you develop a training program, you've got some different foundational training subjects. You've got individual workers, duties and roles. You've got communication, teach them basic radio operation. You can teach them how to complete an incident report if you guys are going to use an incident report. Learn basic first aid, CPR, and AED. I just got retrained on CPR a year ago. Before that, the last time I did that was about 10 years ago. That was before AEDs were really a big thing. Now AEDs are huge. And the thing they teach now is call 911 and get the AED. Well, some places people have them, some people don't. So you still need to learn the other stuff. Learn how to deal with staff. I had some difficult staff in Saddleback Church that I dealt with. Hopefully you guys don't have that here. Learn to deal with difficult people. We deal with difficult people day in and day out. I deal with difficult people when I'm sitting on an airplane traveling around. Everybody's in a hurry. Everybody's wanting to get someplace quicker before I do. Then you also need to know how to deal with the congregation. And then you also need to figure out what you're going to do with children's security procedures. You want to diversify training tactics. So you've got some classroom instruction, tabletop exercise, emergency drills or exercises, and keep it interesting. So when you schedule practice drills, you want to conduct those drills as often as needed to maintain team skills. And also at the end of those trainings, debrief, figure out what you could have done better, what could have been done differently. Then you also want to tailor your training roles. Security team members generally require more training. You want to define your use of force in detail. Okay, who in the group is trained and committed to carry a weapon? And also what level of force are you guys going to need for various situations? Training is going to increase as responsibility increases, and training should be ongoing and conducted regularly. Then once you deployment happens only when you have a new volunteer who's ready to be sent to his area of responsibility. Now don't be quick to send somebody out in the security team. Make sure they know and that they're ready. Then you want to check in with them at regular intervals to see how they're doing. And also rotate your volunteers to different positions. If you have various positions in your church, make sure they're not, stuck in the same. Don't put Joe at the front door all the time when he doesn't like greeting, he doesn't like maybe smiling at people. So rotate them around. Guard against burnout. This is huge. You want to manage your volunteers. Don't let their excitement get the best of them. Make sure that every weekend, and extra events during the week, even if they want to. Sometimes you need to tell people, hey, look, it's okay. You can take a break. We don't. And then overwork leads to disencouragement, burnout, fatigue, and more important, spiritual depletion. Then you want to establish a schedule and intentionally build time off. Every other weekend is best. You want to provide ongoing spiritual support and outlets for personal. That's key. Make sure that your volunteers are cared for, that they understand, and that they are in church, and they're not just outside all the time. So I know I ran through that quickly. I will be around here all day. Curtis is going to be here. He has a lot of stuff that he brought with him for insurance, different insurance-related materials that Brotherly Mutual offers. So, anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
Churches tend to be experience vivid in terms of the type of strategy that they develop, and one assessment does not fit them all. How proactive should a church be to look at areas where it has not had a problem, even though you talk about soliciting input from members, law enforcement officials, looking at state policy? How proactive should a church be for problems it has not yet had?
I think it should be very proactive because it's like I said, it's not if, it's when something's going to happen. It may have not happened here, but it could potentially happen. So that's why we encourage people to reach out to other churches around that have had the issue. I always encourage churches to have in the area to have almost like an email set up. Because if you have a difficult person that comes in here and you deal with him and he leaves and he goes down the street to the next church and you guys haven't let that next church know, he may potentially cause problems there. And it's a real simple thing to just let church. But yeah, keeping everybody informed and around, I think, is key.
Just one other question about that. Is there a general policy or position paper that might cause one to think about things that one has not yet thought about?
Brotherly Mutual has some sample policies on their website that you can go and look at. Yeah, brotherlymutual.com. Yep, have a lot of stuff there for you. Yes, sir.
I'm reading your thing up on the screen, so I'm realizing this may not be a question you can necessarily answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. You talk about having, the church team decide about conceal and carry, allow, not allow, that kind of thing. My question is, if a church makes a decision to allow, and maybe even to include as part of the policy, in the case of in a situation where there is a shooting, if one of your volunteers, could a church be liable if it allows conceal and carry, makes it part of its team, and a team member by accident shoots someone? Could the church be liable for that if that's been a part of their?
I'm going to let Curtis answer that question since he's...
Sure. If you have someone on your security team, then you're responsible, and you want to become liable. There are some companies that will not insure you if you have concealed carry. The question comes down to who owns that bullet. If there's someone that you've appointed and approved, they're covered under the policy. If there's somebody that's just there on their own and they're involved in an altercation, they're not covered because they're not appointed by you. So that's why you have to make sure that you recruit the right people and you train them. And the question will become, are they appointed and approved by you? And if they are, they will be covered under our policy. If they're not, they will be covered under their own homeowner's policy.
But I would assume that's also why it's important for the church to make some kind of statement,
Right.
one way or the other.
Yeah, and it's really important on any issue that you have a policy and procedures guideline, so that when you go to court, they want to know what you're doing and what kind of due diligence are you putting into place to protect your people and your volunteers. So that's really important.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So, my outlook on this, the reason I'm involved in my church's team, is that I think that once you put something in the policy, then you're responsible for it. Now, I don't really want to put things in that we actually are responsible for. I don't want to create issues that then somebody can come back and say, well, you wrote this policy, but you misapplied the policy, or you didn't apply the policy, or you failed to live up to your policy, and then somebody says you're liable because you had a policy. So what I really wanted to know from you guys is from a legal and insurance perspectives, what are the things that we really are responsible for, and what are the things that are elected?
Well, I'm going to talk from a personal standpoint. I mean, you're responsible for anything that happens on your property. If I came in here today and I tripped and fell, this church is liable, whether I decide to make a claim or not. I carry a $2 million umbrella policy on my personal home. Not because I want to, not because I want to pay it, but it's just to protect me, my assets, and I live out in the rural area of Indiana. So any time that you guys, somebody steps foot on your property, the church is responsible. So I think, and I'll let Curtis speak to this, anytime that you have, policy and procedures in place, it's going to better help you, but I'll let Curtis answer that question better than I can.
Well, there are certain things that you need to do. Well, I would suggest that you have a local attorney look at your policy and see what they say about it. If you don't have any policy at all, like Matt said, you're still going to be liable because it's your property. And if you don't have any policy or procedures, you're going to be more negligent than if you have a specific policy or procedure. So it depends on the issue, I guess, but you would need to talk to an attorney and have them help you. Brotherhood Mutual does that for free. You don't have to be a Brotherhood Mutual customer, by the way. If you have a policy, procedures, guidelines, and you want to submit that, our attorneys will look at it for you. They'll make some general recommendations. If you have a specific question about something, you can also access our legal department, and they'll answer that within a few hours for you. Again, there's no charge for that, and you do not have to be a Brotherhood Mutual customer. We're not here to, well, I guess we are promoting Brotherhood to a certain extent, but we're not, this isn't a sales thing. We just want to let you know that we're here and we're available to help you. But to answer the question, you need to have someone on the legal side help you with those kinds of things.
And I'll be around, so if you guys have more questions, I know we've got to move on here, but
I'd like to address that question if I may. Hi, folks. I'm Glenn Gage. I'm a retired Air Force and former law enforcement, but I'm not retired law enforcement. I conduct the... Okay, I'm uncomfortable with this, but I'll try. I conduct the Seconds Count Concealed Carry Handgun Service. It's a free and volunteer service that I do to teach people like you to conceal carry if your church allows you to and wants you to, for the pure purpose of protecting your church in situations like this. This is the reason I'm here today. As a North Carolina concealed carry handgun instructor, I can assure you that North Carolina law says that, and the North Carolina law, as well as the Second Amendment, says that every citizen of the United States, every citizen of North Carolina who has been given a permit to conceal carry a handgun, every responsible citizen who has achieved that accreditation has the right to defend themselves under a preset and prescribed set of circumstances with lethal force in any place that they have the right to be. And as long as someone defends themselves, that includes others, by the way, defends themselves or others under the prescribed preset parameters and stipulations of the law, they defend themselves with lethal force. They do it according to the law, no matter where they are or who they are. They are immune from civil and criminal liability. They have to act properly, but North Carolina law protects from civil and criminal liability to somebody who acts properly with lethal force, defending themselves or others under a prescribed and preset set of circumstances.
okay, this is why we have people like Glenn here today to answer these questions, because like I said, I traveled all 50 states and I don't know what each state's law. I try to check that before I go in. Thank you, Glenn. All right, thank you guys. I'll be around.
I want to bring this to a more likely scenario. I mean, you're talking about the worst case scenario now, shootings or bombings or something like that. But what's more likely is you're going to have somebody collapse on your property, faint, have a heart attack, something like that. I would think that Good Samaritan laws would probably carry the day in most instances like that. So I would say my church is not required to have a trained CPR team on hand. But that's just an example of something that some people think, we're all getting AEDs now, and I agree with that, promote that. But do we require our staff to have a certain level of formal training, or do we go with Good Samaritan? That's the kind of thing I want to know.
Yeah, I would recommend that. But Don, if you want to, you and I can talk afterwards, and we can give you some more advice. But I know we've got to move on here. So thank you guys for allowing me to come and share with you today.
And just to follow up, so at the end we're going to have a time for some more Q&A, and so we're actually going to have a break in just a few minutes. But before that, I want to ask Ed Johnson, come on up. Ed is actually friend of mine from college. I know he looks younger than I do, but I said, you got more gray. Okay. So one of the great things about coming back to Durham is meeting old friends. So Ed and I were at Gardner Webb together. He lives here in Durham and is the CEO of a company called Campus Safety Products. He's going to share a little information with you about that. I think this is they have some great tools for churches. And so I want him to share a little bit, and then we're going to take a break, and we'll come back and we're going to hear from law enforcement and also from carry and conceal. And then we'll finish the time up with a time for Q&A with our panel of all of our presenters. Okay? Ed Johnson.
Little tidbit of information about Marty. I don't know if you know this or not. Marty was a college football player at Gardner Webb, and I was his cheerleader. So I don't know if there's a guy who is retired from Durham Public Police Department here. His name is Frank Gore, Franklin. Remember Franklin? I don't know if any of y'all know Frank Gore, but Franklin, Marty and I knew him as Franklin. Frank was a tall beanpole, and now he's like Arnold Schwarzenegger. but he's suffering from cancer right now, and so I'm just going to take this opportunity to please ask you to lift Frank and his lovely wife up in your prayers. Touch on one of the items that was talked about as far as background checks. All of you, most churches, if you're not doing background checks, I'm sure you do. In a past life, I was the Chief Information Officer for the Department of Justice here in North Carolina. Part of my responsibility was supporting the SBI in doing background checks. And I can tell you that there's a lot of different sources for background checks that you can go to online. I would encourage you to go to the State Bureau of Investigation, call them up in Raleigh, and they have a service. They will do a background check for you. There's a nominal charge, but it's probably not as much as what you would pay online. And they're going to give you international background checks. They actually, and that was something that was started under my leadership there. They not only do a local and state, but they also do national, and now they also have tie-ins to Interpol criminal information sharing. So if foreign countries are participating in Interpol and their criminal information is being tied into the Interpol databases, then the SBI has the capability of doing an international background check, and that's not something you're going to get online. So I would encourage you to reach out to our SBI. You pay for them as a taxpayer, and I can assure you they do a tremendous job. A little about my company. I'm a Southern Baptist. Ronnie Hilliard, I'm going to pick on you, Ronnie. Ronnie's my cousin, and nobody else, he probably didn't know that. I'm just kidding. We've got some old friends here, familiar faces. My father's a retired pastor. Some of y'all may know him. I'm Eddie Johnson. Most people know me as Eddie. My dad, he's Ed, and he's a retired pastor. And Frank, I live right down the street from you. So we're neighbors. Our company is a Durham-based company, and it was just started in 2014. And we believe that the design of this device, it's called the RhinoWare Door Barricade System, is a gift from the Lord. I mean, it came to us quite literally in a dream. But we never really thought about churches. It was designed for schools, Sandy Hook and everything else you might have heard in the news. But we've seen the Lord's hand in every step that we've taken from the time that it was drawn on a piece of paper up until today. I don't want to take too much time giving a lot of the background, but the Lord has tremendously blessed us. Like I said, it was designed for schools and such, but it's also something that the military has caught on to. We're in Fort Knox. The Army has chosen it as their de facto standard lockdown device. And there's nobody that's got better security, physical security infrastructure than, I would imagine, in Fort Knox. Yet they still decided to add this extra layer. Do I have the, okay, if you can just forward on to the, I don't know if I had it. Okay. You can forward it on as well. Keep going. There's some, the FBI put out, a couple of years ago, put out a report on active shooting events that have taken place across the country. Now, they went from 2000 and 2013, and you can see that's kind of the breakdown as far as all the different areas. I don't know if you can see that or not. But there's a good number of, as far as, that's almost 4% as far as places of worship. There's been, okay, forward on, please. Okay, there's been, since 1980, there have been 139 shootings in churches, usually on a Sunday morning. When our guard's down, I mean, we're in worship, maybe we're singing or listening to the sermon, and just like what happened down in Texas recently, or in Nashville, or during prayer meeting on a Wednesday evening in Charleston. You know, that doesn't, our guard's down. I mean, our nose is in the Bible and in the Word, and we're studying and we're learning, but we're not really thinking about being attacked. We're a litigious society. It really is. It's unfortunate. My wife, who's from England, likes to say it's not only the land of opportunity, but it's the land of litigation. And it really is unfortunate that those things come into place. But I appreciate the pastor from Hillsborough saying that we've got to approach this from a shepherd's point of view, and in that we're protecting our congregation and doing everything that we can. Litigation should be secondary. We've got to protect those people, but still obviously it's something that we have to consider. But you can see here, it's the numbers are pretty significant, even though they're the likelihood statistically isn't very high from an active shooter standpoint. There are many other hazards, many other concerns that we have from a church safety point of view, and so it's important that we address those and we prepare and be proactive as we're going along. You can pass it forward on. That's just the number of the mass shootings, anything over two victims, and that's just in 2 years, from 2013 to 2015. It shows you that and there's quite a few in North Carolina, as you can see. It's not something that, as like the gentleman said, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Nobody thinks it's going to happen to us, but the likelihood is that it will. This is a very telling study from as far as schools are concerned, and you can go take it in churches, government buildings, manufacturing, hospitals. You can go to any different industry. You're going to get a very similar type of result. But this is just K through 12 in universities from 1990 until the present. And the most telling line, you can see the color, but it's a blue line. That's the number of year-over-year shooting events that have occurred, active shooting events, and we're in the upswing of a pretty significant hockey stick. Now, this is just for schools, understand, but that bottom line, you can see that's one straight line that's going across. That's the number of deaths due to fire. And there actually hasn't been a death due to fire in a school, in a facility. I want to say it's like 60 years, and that says a lot about the fire code that we've developed over time. It really does. But there's a new threat, and I think that's what needs to be emphasized here: is that there's a new threat that's being addressed, and that's being seen, and we are trying to address it. You also have OSHA responsibilities. If your church has employees, from OSHA guidelines dictate that you have to protect your employees from any kind of perceived or understood threat. And our run over door barricade system helps to make your organization more compliant in that regard as well. We're in manufacturing facilities. We're in every casino in Atlantic City. Not in the hotel rooms, but in the back office areas. I mean, they're pretty. And now, because of what happened in Las Vegas, we've gotten a lot of attention there as well. Homeland Security recommends that if you're in a lockdown situation, that you take any kind of heavy equipment, furniture or whatever, and push it in front of the door and barricade yourself in. If you're hearing gunshots, if there is in fact an active shooter incident that you're experiencing at that moment, you know, it takes a lot of time to do that, and it takes when you're hearing gunshots, your brain goes out the window. You know, you can't carry on a thought process. We have a better solution. I don't know if y'all can see the device from here, but it mounts at the bottom of a door on the same side as the doorknob, and it's pretty simple. It was designed so that a kindergartner can lock her classroom down. Oh, they're good. Good idea. Now, understand this is at floor level, but literally, you just flick it. And you can also, because it's at floor level, you can actually kick it with your foot as well. But it's that simple. You just touch it, and boom, it's locked down. And there's no getting in that door once the door is locked down. We have a video on our website that the special response team at Fort Knox, when they were testing the product, the Army team was testing the product. They were taking battering rams and sledgehammers and everything, and the door would not move until finally the actual door frame itself. It was a wooden door frame, and the wooden door frame itself is what gave way, and there wasn't a scratch on the device. And that's when they decided to put this device on every door in every building at Fort Knox. For law enforcement and fire officials, first responders, SWAT teams, we have a tactical breach tool, and this was what the Army Corps of Engineers said was their sole source justification. And it's only for law enforcement. Obviously, for facilities, you know, if you've got a security detail at your church, we would work with you on getting local law enforcement to issue your response to your security team. But we partner with law enforcement in every locality that we're in. But it's something that with this pocket, it just goes on a tactical vest, for instance. But without this, you're not going to get it. But with this, you just flip on the outside of the door, the law enforcement officer, and I don't want to make a loud noise with my microphone here. But imagine this is on the floor, and you're kicking it. The law enforcement officer on the outside of the room is kicking it. You just kick it under the door. It pops it up out of the floor. They can storm the room and apprehend the shooter. If the shooter has barricaded himself into a room. But it's that simple, just like that, and they can go into the room. This is something that we don't. If you go to our website, in our literature, on the back pew there, on that rear pew, there's some information about the product. No pictures, no videos of this, obviously, for obvious reasons. We don't want bad guys to get an idea that it's out there. But law enforcement, or if you've got your security detail, you would make sure that somebody on your security detail would have access to those, or your pastor. But that's pretty much it in a nutshell. We also have a telemetry device that we call Runaware Connect that can detect when the device is activated. If you can, go to the next slide. Oh, you're not upstairs. Sorry, but we're in several churches. I mean, we've got a lot of larger churches here in North Carolina, and it's kind of funny that most all the churches, we've got a couple of Catholic churches, but most all the churches are Southern Baptist. Hickory Grove Baptist in Forest Hill, Jonathan Scott's church down in South Carolina. No, excuse me, in Charlotte. Providence Baptist Church in Raleigh. Crossroads Fellowship in Raleigh and in Charlotte as well. But and we have a couple of churches in Texas, Oklahoma, and in Arkansas. But they're all quite, I mean, I don't know why, it just happened to be Southern Baptist. So, and it's something we never really even considered, that when we were coming out with it, that it would be something that we would even be talking to churches about. But it has been a very timely product. And we see it as just the Lord blessing us, and we see it as a ministry to the church community. And that's one of the reasons that we've also started providing security services, CSP tactical services, not training for not only for churches but for universities and schools and corporations. But we see this as a ministry to the church community. And we've got Bob McLaughlin, Bonsai McLaughlin. Some of y'all probably may know Bob. Or Bonsai, if you know him, he's Bonsai. And he's retired from the Durham Police Department. And he's also currently on the Pershing County Sheriff's Office. I'll let him go through his background. He's also part-time with the, is it Earl Mills Fire Department? Earl Mills Fire Department. And for the last 6 years before he retired this past year, he was the emergency management coordinator for North Carolina Central University. So he's done some tremendous work, and he sees it also. He's a member of the Summit, so he's a Southern Baptist as well. And he's currently working with the Summit on their emergency operations plan. I'm sure he'll probably go into that. And so Bob is going to take over. We've kind of I'll make sure we get on the right slides, but Bob is going to be taking over the presentation after our break, and we'll be going into that right now. But in the meantime, are there any questions that any of you might have about the device and how it works? Pretty simple. Yes, sir.
Maybe to say that emergency device is only available to law enforcement.
We partner with law enforcement, and so we don't want it. You know, for instance, you're not going to find it for sale on Amazon. We won't sell it to individuals. We would, if the church wants to have it, then we notify law enforcement that this church has 1, 2, 3 of these devices. We would actually rather the law enforcement actually issue it to the church, just so that they have that relationship with you as well. But if you have a church security detail, and especially if you've got somebody in your congregation that's already law enforcement, sworn officer, then we'll sell them to you directly.
The thing that concerns me about that, my door is 50 off for children.
Mm-hmm.
They can very well lock themselves in a room, which you would really need to call. But of course, some of the places do have officers. But I can see a situation where a teacher might be injured or something, and a child walking in and nobody be able to get in.
That's a very good point. In fact, we've got several sheriffs across the state whose wives are teachers of autistic children. There's probably 3 or 4 in the state that their wives are actually autistic child student teachers, and or teachers of autistic students. That's a very good point. We would work with as far as the school system and things like that. I don't know if she's with Durham Public Schools or if she's. I'm sorry. Wake County. Okay. If it was to be put into a school, I mean, that's something that we would work with law enforcement in that particular jurisdiction. But the principal in a school situation, usually the principal and the school resource officer both will have these tools in case something just like that happens. Now, I can tell you also that this has been installed in schools for over 2 years. And we haven't had a single instance where a student or where there's been an unauthorized or inadvertent deployment of the device, where it's, maybe somebody slammed a door, and you can't slam the door hard enough for this thing to deploy by itself. But if somebody was to do just what you're describing, it could happen. It could certainly happen. But that kind of goes into the lockdown plan as for in training and drilling and on the proper use of the device. The same thing as pulling a fire alarm. It's why kids are going to pull a fire alarm once in a while, but they also know that there's consequences. And a lockdown plan, and the church will also want to have a lockdown plan that governs the use of this device as well. So that's something that Bob can talk to you much more about. Thank you, Marty. That's good.
Okay, we're gonna take a 10-minute break. Let me remind you, the men's restroom downstairs